alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a guest to the podcast, a new guest to the podcast, Jocie McKade. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for hosting me. As you said, my name is Jocie McKade, and I'm the author of 15 books, most of mine filled completely with snark, because I can find humor in the most unlikely places. Mostly I write cozy mystery, or what I like to call thriller mysteries. In other words, my characters would fit in a thriller novel and they would be the worst agent in a thriller novel. I also have written some romantic comedies. So like I said, most of what I write has a bit of snark and humor to it.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I've written, it's 15 novels. That's a good chunk. I have a few. I have about 13 out now. I just recently counted, so we're in a similar ballpark. Yeah, but I mostly write fantasy and sci-fi, as regular listeners will know. So quite a different set of genre there.
Well, it is, but I love science fiction. I am a science fiction junkie. I just don't usually write it because, I should say. Actually, you're getting a scoop. I have almost finished a trilogy of a science fiction space opera that is again filled with snark. Yeah. There's some, Native American background to it and some myths that I took and used it to create another universe out there.
So that sounds delightful. Yeah.
It's really fun. So, it's completely out of the norm for what I normally write, and I'm not quite sure how it'll be accepted by my core readers, but it was one of those projects that you just need to write because you need to write it. And that's okay if nobody buys it, nobody sells it. I told the story that I needed to tell. And got those little voices out of my head.
if there's another reason to write a story, at least personally for me, I haven't found it. I mean, I have a hard time writing anything that isn't really demanding it. Even though that's practically all I do. It's weird. Like this podcast and writing, that's basically all I do right now. Uh-huh. And yet the stories that always win, that win the battle to get written, they're always the ones they're the most demanding ones, and those ones are always just random. It seems like sometimes, or they're the ones that, for some reason, it's important to me in that moment.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're writing, to get back to your mysteries and your thriller stuff, and I guess your romantic comedies at some point, that's a fair range there. But when it comes to writing the books is more typical for you, maybe. What draws you to the story there? Because, I can't stand writing a book in even the same universe sometimes, 2 in a row. And I imagine you have a series here, right? At least for some of them.
The one series that's actually my most popular is called Mayson-Dickson Mysteries. And the title is, pretty obvious. There's the premise of the story actually started a while ago. All of my family is from the southern United States. I, however, was born north of the Mason-Dixon line. So I always laugh and say I'm my family's token Yankee. But I spent many summers growing up in the South. And as my mother used to tell me, I can go from y'all to you guys in the same sentence. So my premise to start writing this was, what if there were 2 sisters, twins, and separated at birth? One was raised in Talladega, Alabama, and the other one in Boston, Massachusetts. And through a series of mysterious circumstances, they're thrown together. And the mysterious circumstances were their parents. So they end up in a city, in a safe house. And in order to try to investigate the truth of their parents, they open a PI business as a front, what they think is going to be a front, for doing investigations into the secret life of their parents. And on the way, they're solving mysteries of dead bodies. And in each novel, they get a little closer to the truth about their parents. But the humor in the book comes from one very southern girl and one very northern girl, and how their culture collides in many ways.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the twin stuff, that's obviously that would resonate with me. I am an identical twin as well.
Who are you? That's awesome.
Yeah, I have an identical twin brother, so yeah.
Cool.
Anyway. But we were not separated at birth.
I don't think the world can stand two of me, so the world got lucky on that one.
Dodge the bullet. Dodge the bullet.
That's right.
So your series. I mean, you've got these two characters. Which point of view do you do it from? Most of those are. Is it a single point of view, or do you alternate, or something like that?
No, I alternate between the two.
Okay.
And as I said, having grown up actually on both sides of that Mason-Dixon line, it's pretty easy for me to slide between the two cultures. Boston is a little bit more north than where I was raised, which is the Buckeye State. So I've tapped a few people going, is this what you would say, or is this where you would go? But, one of the things that I found, because I have a good friend in Boston, is people who are native to Boston abhor, hate, I can't think of a strong enough word, NASCAR. Well, me, of course, loves NASCAR being from Talladega. So that right there in and of itself creates some friction when, the Southern girl, Emmy, wears her NASCAR hat and that type of thing. And the other one is a little more, she's went to Harvard and she's more refined and likes the designer clothes. So, I kind of played up the stereotypes a little bit just to give the characters a little more raw division.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. If you're going to be emphasizing, where they're from, you kind of have to keep emphasizing it. So
yeah, you do. You
gotta have those identifiers.
It also makes it fun, and in many ways, writing these two characters, even though they use different words for the same things, and their food is maybe a little different, or their restaurants or their haute couture. Down at the core, they all want the same thing. Most of us as humans do. We want to be happy. We want to be safe. We want to, pursue a career we love. And so at the core, they're very much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things. I just recently read this book, and the author's name is escaping me. It's a double T. It's a Theodora something or other. But she's mostly a romance author, and I read this book about it's her nonfiction book about writing, and it's called, I think it's like something about, I cannot remember any names right now, but the book is it's about what she calls universal fantasies, right? And there are these things that everybody kind of perks up when they notice them in a story. At least a large number of people do. And so that's what this book is basically, her nonfiction book was about that. And that kind of gets what you were saying, though, about, everybody kind of has, we're all on the same page on some level. There's the general, on the general side, everybody has the same needs, the same kind of goals,
Right. Yes. Yes, we do.
Even though they all manifest very differently. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, we manifest those things a lot differently.
Absolutely, yeah. So when you start writing a book, how do you start with a mystery? Because I don't do much mystery. Do you start with a killer, a scenario? You obviously have your detectives, you have your two characters for this series.
Yeah. When I first started this series, and one of the first mysteries I wrote is what I call a Bloodless Mystery. It's a tea leaf reader series. And so she just sort of saw things that, a theft or, small things like that could be resolved in a short story.
Okay.
So I thought I could do the same thing when I wrote this series, and I was very sorely mistaken, because I had no idea until the end of the book who the killer was, or why the killer did it, or, where I should drop the bodies. And I absolutely forgot the cardinal rule of you really need to let your readers know what the heck you mean by the time you get to the end of the book. So that was a grand lesson and a very long and tedious rewrite.
Oh, yeah. As a discovery writer myself, or what they call a planter or a gardener, whatever, all these words, I understand that feeling so much. Though I've never actually gotten to the rewrite. I've had a few books that I had to rewrite heavily. It hasn't happened in a while. Well,
Yes.
I say a while, but like in 2020, I actually had to rewrite an entire novel from scratch, which was a lot. But
that's bad.
But not since then. Not since then.
Right.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Yeah. Not since Shadow Prince have I had to redo an entire book from scratch.
Good.
Yes, it's. I mean, you have to flush 80,000 words down the toilet, more or less. That's a little bit of a painful thing to do.
Yeah, the worst I think I ever had was many years ago, back in the last century. I had a very, like a 396 computer, and it decided to give me the green screen of death in the middle of an 80,000 word book, and I had not saved anything. Other than handwritten notes. Yeah. So valuable. I've learned very many lessons the hard way.
Yes, I hear that too. I mean, I grew up in the age of the internet, so I've pretty much always been quick to back up. I don't think I've lost a single large piece without deliberately cutting it loose.
Right. Yeah. Well, this one wasn't deliberate, but that's okay. Perhaps I always keep thinking to myself, maybe the rewrite was better and that's why it got lost. And then I cuss a while and, shake my fist like Snoopy at the universe. So.
Yeah. Oh, geez. I mean, yeah, for writers out there, backups are very important and you should always do them when you can. Obviously, the era might prevent you sometimes. You can't put a book on a floppy disk necessarily.
Backups, but they were the 3.5-inch floppies. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a bit big. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a little bit after before my time. Honestly, I remember floppy disks from when I was in third grade, maybe.
Yeah, I was a teenager, so that was the world of it then. So they were pretty much coming into general use at that point. But yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, enough misery about losing manuscripts.
Right. Lessons learned. I have plenty of USBs. I do a cloud thing. We're good.
Exactly. I just reinstalled Dropbox today. I'm safe.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I have another backup program as well. I've got I have it. I'm just covered in backups.
Yes, and 2 backup hard drives. Yes.
Exactly. So when you picture an author, folks out there, picture somebody who has backed up their files a lot more than you might think.
Yes.
This is not misery. You can't just burn the manuscript and get rid of it. No, that won't work anymore.
No, not anymore. Although, I guess you could destroy the hard drive. I mean, sometime in the future, some archaeologist digs up a hard drive. It might be an ugly thing.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, it was one of my favorite things. It was this series of science fiction books about this man who's killed in the 21st century, and then he wakes up as an artificial intelligence because he was frozen or something.
Oh, wow.
It's called We Are Many, We Are Bob is the name of the first book.
Ah.
Because the guy's name is Bob, and he gets turned into a self-replicating space probe.
Okay.
Yeah, so he makes more of himself. He makes copies of his own intelligence that pilot other space probes. It's a bizarre series, but very fun. And
it sounds fun, yeah.
But one of the things that they mention in there is we couldn't really restore your brain. You're not actually the guy who died. You're you're based on him. You're inspired by him. And that's what, which is an so I imagine repairing a hard drive would be a lot, in the year 3000 might be kind of like that, if it's even done.
I would think so. Or, it's just so ancient it might crumble like an old manuscript. Some things I've written, that would be the wisest choice, or hopeful thing to do, but.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, do you think you can? I mean, I have a hard enough time spinning up a computer that's 10 years old. Now imagine one 50 or 100 years old.
Oh, I know.
And then 1,000? Oh, perish the thought. No, that's not happening. So I guess the thing I'm most kind of stuck on right now is how do you know when your books are. When you've written something quality, do you ever know if you've written how good it is until you see people's reaction to it?
I don't know if I'm atypical or typical, but I honestly don't feel I've ever written anything that worthy. I think as an author, I always go back and think I could have written it better. I could have structured a sentence better. And I've gotten wonderful, absolutely wonderful positive feedback. People do like my mystery series, but I'll go back and read one and I will see something that just glares at me and went, oh, why did I write it that way? And most authors that I know, because I also work as an editor for Readers Entertainment, so I interview a lot of authors. And I don't know that I've ever met one that said, yeah, this is a masterpiece. I did it perfect. It's great. But I don't think I've ever heard that from an author. And I think
that's a little bit much. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, or at least that they were satisfied with it. I think it also just comes with being a creative. I'm not sure I've ever met anyone who is a musician, an artist, an actor, a theater performer, who doesn't always think they could have done their creative process better.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I enjoy my stories, and so as long as I'm enjoying it when I reread it, I consider that a victory. Like, that story is good enough for me, Yeah,
and I do that. I mean, there's times when I don't, a few of them I've gone back and went, you know what? You did pretty good on this. That's a good story. It's a story I would buy if someone else wrote it. And to me, that's quite the accolade. Or if somebody, the defining moment to me is I had an author who say they'd had a hellish year. They found my books and my books got them through the hell. And that brought me to tears, and I thought, there's why I put words to paper.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I hear it all the time, actually, from many of my guests have similar opinions, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'd be on the same page. I can't remember, I don't have a big enough audience yet to really people saying, well, your book got me through some hard times. I've had it happen a couple times, but not a lot.
Right.
Because,
me either. I mean, I'm still fairly small and unknown, so to speak, but the core group of readers that I have really bolstered me to write more because of the way they've said the books affected them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's interesting because I was not really certain. I'm still not really ever certain about how well the book is, how well people are liking the book. Because like if you look at the reviews, that doesn't really tell you much of a story about the book in a weird way. Like even if you read your reviews, it's like that only gives you a kind of a skewed perspective because those are the people who cared enough about the book to come back and write a review, not the people who were like mildly entertained or even really entertained but didn't feel like writing a review.
True. Mm-hmm.
And I think I kind of tend to think that, most people who finish the book are going to say that was okay. That was pretty good at the very least when they read one of my things.
Yeah.
And that I consider that to be kind of a victory, especially considering how far I've come because I wrote like 15 books before I could publish, 13 books, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite a road sometimes. People see someone who says, oh, they hit the bestseller list with their first book. Yes, but you didn't see the 15 that's under the bed or that they threw away or that they cried through. They just see that one book that's out there was successful, but not all the unsuccess before it.
Absolutely. And it's even for the rare authors that get the one book, that their first novel becomes the big hit, like Patrick Rothfuss with the Kingkiller Chronicles. Well, that book took him like 10 years to create the first book. And that's, if not longer, it took him like his entire life up to that point to basically write that book.
Right. And honestly, for a first book coming out, I never wanted it to hit the bestseller list because I think if you hit that pinnacle with your first book, it's going to be really difficult for everything else to live up to that book. Everything you write subsequently is going to be really difficult to live up to that bestseller.
And it's actually kind of ironic because you think, because that's all in the author's head in a way. Because like, oh yeah, if my next book doesn't sell as well, that means it's worse. When in fact, it's probably still better as a story because practice,
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe the third book in a series can hit the bestseller list. Then they can go back and make the first two bestsellers. Yeah, I got it all worked out.
No, I mean, if it's the first, the second, the third, hell, if I write a 5-book series and the 5th one takes off, I'd be happy.
Oh, yeah, I would as well.
If I read a 10-book series, I'd be happy. Though that might be a lot of investment to get to book 10 if the other books are still.
I've only known 2 or 3 people, authors who have written that many books in a series and kept it successful. I think it's very difficult to do.
Okay.
to keep it
Because I've heard in the indie world, we often hear that you need to write 5 to 9 books, some large number of books to make like an impact with a series. At least that's what I've heard recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. What is it, 20 books to 50,000 and that kind of thing. There's the formula there, and I know several authors who do that. Honestly, watching, I think it's almost reminiscent of a TV series on many levels, and the fact that we get comfortable with that cast and that crew, and we get emotionally invested, and we want to see how the world turns out for them. I mean, I am a big Star Trek fan. I am a total geek with Star Trek, and pretty much any of them except ones Abrams made and when he messed up the whole series. But you watch them week after week, and it's almost like visiting a family member week after week. So I think if you write a good series, people like that continuity because they like to go back and visit those characters that they've gotten invested in through 3, 4, 5 books.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, and that makes sense. I have so much trouble writing a series. I mean, my longest one right now is only 3 books long. I'm going to expand to that. I have 2 of them that are 3 books long.
Yeah.
And a few that are shorter. But it's just like, my ADHD acts up. I always want to go somewhere else, meet new characters, new people, basically.
Well, I do that. Yeah, I'm very comfortable writing certain series like Mayson-Dickson because they've become, almost real to me. But I also, somebody once said, how many books outlines do you have? Well, according to my computer, I have about 47 book outlines, but all of them are standalones. None of them are a series because these little stories, pop in my head and I'm going, I want to write a story about this. I'll never have enough lifetime to write all the stories that pop in my head.
Yeah, likewise.
And so I try to write which characters, haggle me the worst. That's who I try to write.
Yeah. I mean, if it's the ones that they stand up and say, it has to be me. I write my story.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get in your face,
Yes. Something to that squeaky wheel.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, I guess there is something to that squeaky wheel.
Yes. It's like, it goes, what is it? I think there's a Bible verse about that too. Anyway.
I think there is.
Yeah, something about like a scorpion or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah, but I'd probably, mess it up and offend a lot of people if I tried to go with that.
Me too. Yeah, and yeah, to think that I one time probably could quote that, but now not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to your approach to writing, this is kind of the last question about writing that I want to ask today. But when it comes to your approach, are you more emotionally driven or more analytically driven? We talked about the characters, but what pulls you into your own stories?
Probably emotion. I think so because I always wonder what would I do in that situation? And my characters are far braver than I am because I'd be going, I ain't doing that. So I think sometimes that's about 50-50. I want to analyze the situation and be the detective that sees things other people miss. But I also don't want to be so analytical that somebody doesn't feel the compassion or the laughter or the frustration of the character as they go through it. So 50-50, 60-40 maybe.
Lean in one way or the other, maybe, depending on the time.
I think I'm a writer because math is not my strong point.
Fair enough. Yeah. So Jocie, what have you been reading lately? Have you had any books that struck your fancy across your path?
Most of the time when I'm writing, I don't read fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction. I'm a big nonfiction reader. I like a lot of history. Through the summer, though, my daughter's been going through some health issues, so I've had a chance to read a few books while waiting on appointments. And I've read, I'm a big fan of Brad Thor, and I've read his Black Ice, and Craig Johnson, who I met and happened to knock down once. Part of my loveliness is I'm kind of like a bandaged unicorn. I'm a klutz. I'm a happy klutz, but I'm a klutz. Couple of other series. A writer friend of mine, Ellen Butler, she writes the Karina Cardinal, I think, is it Karina Cardinal Mysteries, and they're actually set in World War II era, and they're really, really unique books. She does a lot of historical World War II mystery solving, and Kim Foster, I've read her series. That's a burglary series. It's a mystery and it's quite fun. This girl is a cat burglar, and the guy that she's dating is an FBI agent. So it presents a lot of fun situations.
I could guess that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Description alone is pretty amusing.
And of course, I also love James Rollins, Janet Ivanovich, a lot of those, but I haven't had an opportunity to read a whole lot of them this year. So.
Well, fair enough. That's still a pretty good list. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and as for me, I've been reading actually kind of going back to my roots a little bit, because I did grow up with Warhammer 40,000, the war game, the tabletop game. And I at the time I didn't really read the books that tie in with it, but I'm reading one of the series now. It's the Eisenhorn series by Dan Abnett. So it's about this guy who's like he's an inquisitor in space. So he goes around hunting down bad guys for the Empire. But these guys, huh?
Like a bounty hunter in space?
No, well, kind of, but he is like the kind of the authority of this huge force behind him. The Imperium is this enormous galaxy-spanning empire, and he's kind of an agent of the authority there.
Okay.
And so he gets a bunch of he just recruits a bunch of different people wherever he goes, because he's traveling more or less by himself to start with, but then he's always great. He's gathering up, agents and, assets and stuff like that. So he's kind of like a Fed in that way. He's got his informants and stuff in space.
I'd like to see what a space informant looks like.
They vary a lot, it turns out. But yes, there are a lot of them, and it's an interesting series. And I really enjoy this part of the setting, because this is a very large universe, and it's the thing I like the best about these books, though, is they're not all about the Space Marines, which is parts that get me a little bit bored when it deals with most sci-fi. That's like, yeah, this is all about giant dudes with guns or whatever. Anyway,
right. Yeah, it's Eisenhorn series.
Eisenhorn, yeah, by Dan Abnett.
Okay.
They're getting on there in years now. They came out in the 90s, I think, or the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well,
very well written.
I guess fantasy more than sci-fi would be Anne McCaffrey and the Dragon Slayers, and I think that was actually written when I was around the time I was born. But those are classics now. Dragon Riders of Parn, or anything Asimov. I mean, Bradbury. I've read all of those. I mean, they still hold the test of time, I think.
Oh, I wanted to say, I think I mentioned this one other time, but I'm still reading Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing. And that's really good nonfiction for writers. Yeah, it's a series of his essays, and it's very powerful, and he's very poetic, which kind of surprised me, because I haven't read a ton of Bradbury's actual stories of his fiction.
I read some of the stories, and then late night television, at some point, writers are up at 2 a.m. There was, and I don't recall it being on the television, but a Ray Bradbury theater where they did, and I was going, I had no idea that this was a television program, but off channel at 2 a.m. and I know I'm standing there completely fascinated by it at that point.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, I've heard of that. But I've never seen any of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. It's, comparable to a Rod Serling's Twilight Zone type series. So, yeah, a little more hard science fiction-y than the Twilight Zone is. Ironic. So.
That's funny. So Jocie, where can people find your stuff online? Where can people pick up your books?
They're on Amazon. Quite a few of them are on Amazon exclusive, but I do have several that are on Apple Books, iBooks, and on Barnes & Noble. And you can also get links to all of my books from my website, which is jociemckade.com. And Jocie spelled a weird way. It's Jocie. It's a grandmother's name. So, the spelling's a little different than the norm. but they can find links to all those. And I think most of the Mayson-Dickson series has a free first chapter read on there as well. So if they want to take a look at them, prior to purchasing, they can do that. And several of my shorter books are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a member of Kindle Unlimited, you can get them for free.
Well, excellent. Yeah. So people, go check those out. And thanks once again, Jocie, for being on the show. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And folks, for this podcast, you can find more at mentalcellarpublications.com. That's got the whole feed up on the page, on the front page. But you can also find all my books and my 10 serials that are currently going out on the air. Well, not on the air. They're going out on Kindle Vella. You can find all those at timniederreiter.com/books. They've got links that go anywhere you want, as long as it's Amazon, because that's pretty much where they were all purchased. But, thanks for listening, everybody. And, talk to you later. Have a good week, and stay safe, people. Bye-bye.